Following the defeat of the strongest sorcerer of the modern era, the king of curses, Ryomen Sukuna, battered and bloodied, must take on the rest of the Jujutsu world. And oh man, does he put on one hell of a show. Before we get to the good stuff, I want to introduce a segment that I'm going to call the temperature check. As we go through all of the fights, there are key moments burned in my mind as someone who was there on pretty much all of the major social medias, seeing things go down week to week. I'm hoping that these mini segments can give an idea to those who weren't there what the community reaction was like at the time. In the week that followed chapter 236, for example, the community was pretty fired up, mostly negatively. Gojo had just gotten off-screen and the fraud memes from the Sukuna Defense League were in full swing. Definitely not a good time to be a Gojo fan. While a lot of people were dissatisfied with chapter 236, Kashimo showing up right at the end helped cool off some people. Now, did he deliver? Well, Kashimo is a character that exists in a pretty strange position within Jujutsu Kaisen, both in the manga and the real world. Narratively, he's clearly set up to be a real threat. Hakari is stated to be equal to or stronger than Yuta, yet his fight with Kashimo is one of extreme difficulty. Hakari effectively dies multiple times throughout the fight, but Pachinko go, so he wins out in the long run, only for him to then admit that he wouldn't have won had Kashimo maybe used his curse technique. The reveal that Kashimo has a curse technique in the first place, and especially that he's saving it for Sukuna, was a big deal at the time and created an ever-growing hype train for Kashimo. Countless theories, discussions, and 814 days later, Kashimo finally got a shot at the king. This fight is controversial. That's how I describe it. At this point in time, Kashimo was a pretty popular character that a big portion of the audience, at least online, were excited to see finally go all out. And he does. After not being able to break past Sukuna's defenses normally, Kashimo speeds up. His amped state surprises even Sukuna, allowing Kashimo to dominate the exchange. He's landing hit after hit after hit, building up his charge, and just when Sukuna leaps away, a lightning bolt crackles towards him. An undodgeable attack that was ripping Hakari apart in base, now amped by his curse technique, Mythical Beast Amber. This is surely it for Sukuna. Out from the smoke, a towering monster emerges. 4 arms, a mouth in his stomach, and a face so deformed it makes sense why his mother abandoned him. Sukuna's true form is here, in the flesh. A body built entirely to be the pinnacle of Jujutsu, Kashimo can't help but be at awe of it. Mythical Beast Amber is quite in line with what people were expecting out of it. It was going to either be a large-scale attack that could slay a god, or some kind of self-sacrifice that amped Kashimo up. Think, Kaioken from Dragon Ball or the 8 Gates from Naruto. The problem from a writing perspective is that when a character like Guy or Goku use these self-sacrificing techniques, they tend to actually do something to the opponent. Guy's assault on Madara is my personal favorite because it takes a great supporting character, and for that brief moment in time, transforms him into one of the strongest in the verse, impressing not only us, but Madara as well, who at that time was like the pinnacle. Kashimo fails on that front. And I suspect it's because of the theme that Gege wanted to express with this fight, and while I think I understand the vision, I just don't personally agree with the execution. The reason for Kashimo's quick defeat isn't anything stupid like agenda pushing or Gege hating a character. Let's go back a bit and look at what Kashimo asked Sukuna before they started their fight. How can you connect with others or love those beneath you without knowing nothing of weakness? And enlighten me. Is strength solitude, or is the search for greater power a cross that the strong must bear alone? In response to this, Sukuna calls Kashimo greedy, but he agrees to give him the answer that he's looking for. He fights him fairly, first by staying as Meguna, but once Kashimo activates Mythical Beast Amber and sufficiently impresses Sukuna, he transforms into his Heian era body and proceeds to swiftly bring an end to Kashimo, but not before using his brand new move on him, both as a test drive, but also as a show of respect. The answer to Kashimo's question is simple. Those that he views as weak are all people that challenged him. They gave their all just as he had against Sukuna, and in the end they all met their end. Kashimo seemingly doesn't want to admit or see that everyone he's battled showed respect and love to him through combat, and that by killing them he's been responding in kind, effectively making him more like them than Sukuna. In his case, he lives only for himself, so this whole concept of love doesn't matter. Funnily enough, of everyone that has challenged and will challenge Sukuna, Kashimo felt like he would be the most similar to Sukuna ideologically. But just like everyone else, he ends up being much more human, which I think is a big overarching theme in this final arc. The collective humanity of our cast against the inhuman solitude of Sukuna. Kashimo spent his entire life trying to distance himself from humanity, only to die the same way as everyone else. Thematically, I really like the conclusion, but I would have preferred to see Kashimo do some real damage with Mythical Beast Amber before earning Sukuna's respect. I don't personally view being a half-dead, no-arm, one-eyed Sukuna as that impressive, but hey, that's just my 2 cents. With Kashimo out of the picture, Hakari's domain shatters, the music of Pure Love Train echoing throughout the battlefield as Higuruma and Yuji descend upon Sukuna. But not before we have to wait a week, only to come back to some random-ass Kinjaku chapter. Talk about Blue Ball. I won't cover this portion of the manga in this video, since we're only here for the raid itself, but trust me, Takaba vs Kinjaku will be coming up next, so don't you worry. Temperature check number 2. With Kashimo dead in record time, any saving grace that 236 had in the community at the time was lit on fire, taken out back and shot 12 times in the head. Kashimo was the last thing holding the community together, and now with him gone, the collective brain of the fandom imploded. If you'd swap the brain of an average Jujutsu Foker with Gojo's, Gojo would probably be worse off than when he lobotomized himself like 5 times. It was so shocking and unbelievable that I think a lot of decisions made after the fight were scrutinized beyond anything I'd ever seen. No matter what Gege did, you'd get some goofball in the comments complaining about either A, minor stuff that doesn't matter, B, maybe a genuine critique of the chapter, or my favorite one, C, complaining about something that hasn't even been fully explained yet. The main one that comes to mind is the world cutting slash and an explanation for how it works. For weeks, you'd see people complaining about the ambiguity of the technique and how it was stupid that we never found out about how it works, only for it to eventually be revealed. And even when it was revealed, people still managed to whinge about that too. In my opinion, I think Gege refused to answer the world cutting slash question then and there because of a later chapter, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Given the length of the raid, I'm going to break it down into a few parts, both for my own sanity and to give you a more digestible video since I think we're going to be here a while. Phase 1 of the raid follows immediately after Kashimo's defeat. While Sukuna isn't at full output, his newly regenerated body essentially gives him an extra stock. He can't use domain, but get too close to cleave or get hit by a dismantle and you're dead. The first to jump into battle is actually Meimei's crow, and Sukuna opts to destroy it with Kamutoke, but Meimei's job has already been finished. Simultaneously, Higuruma lion claws his gavel towards Sukuna, barely clipping him. 2 more of those and he might have staggered. Hiding within the debris created by the impact, Yuji steals Gon's entire flow as he sends the rubble flying towards Sukuna. The smoke screen isn't only meant to conceal Yuji though, because from behind Sukuna, Higuruma's gavel changes shape again, this time pulling one of Sukuna's arms away, giving Yuji an opening to strike. The punch is blocked by the remaining 3 arms, but something about Yuji's strike seemed off. Before he's able to process the implication, Higuruma opens his domain, pulling both Yuji and Sukuna into the trial. Hakari vs Uraume. While I could go over this fight the same way that I have everything up until this point, Gege kinda half-assed it, so I will too. Of all of the missed opportunities in the manga, Hakari beating Uraume and eventually healing through Sukuna's domain or slashes in general would have been one of the coolest things Gege could have done, but the best we got was this? Here's my NBA highlights for the fight. Hakari's healing is faster than Gojo's and Sukuna's. Cool, wish we'd gotten to see how it performs against Sukuna. Hakari dropkicks Uraume and almost loses his Jordans. Funny as fuck. Uraume calls everyone else too sentimental, while Hakari's actually super not, and that's why they will treat him as a real threat and destroy him with the full extent of their strength. Cool, we didn't fucking see any of it. I'm a lot more lenient than most people think, mainly because I respect any mangaka that's doing this week to week with almost no breaks, but even for me, this fight was a big miss. Higuruma is easily one of my favorite characters and definitely the best one introduced in the Culling Games for me. I'll save some of my commentary on him for the eventual Culling Games review though. Inside the courtroom, Higuruma makes the case that Yuji is innocent and that the real culprit is none other than Sukuna. The coolest part of this trial for me isn't what happens in the domain, it's the fact that Yuji was actually the one to come up with the idea for a retrial. Yuji has always been portrayed as a little slow, but his instincts in battle have always been top tier. After fighting Higuruma himself and being subject to the domain, even without fully understanding anything really, and getting shot down over and over again in the pre-fight war room, Yuji ultimately comes up with the idea that gets Higuruma to come up with the solution. Higuruma then spends a bunch of pages yapping, mainly re-explaining the rules before getting rudely interrupted by Sukuna, who does not give a fucking shit about the legal system, so he auto gets the death penalty. Judge Man specifically is so upset that the stitches holding his eye sockets together snap as he cries out, guilty. The domain disappears and Higuruma is awarded the Executioner Sword, while Sukuna is left with no curse technique. Ino, Kusakabe, and Choso come out ready to jump Sukuna, but miscalculation. What Judge Man confiscated was not Sukuna's curse technique, but instead the curse tool, Kamutoke. I'm calling this one Kamutoke Gate. Giving Sukuna Kamutoke is one of the strangest and most unneeded things that Gege has done in regards to this fight. It's ineffective against Kashimo, fries one of Meimei's crows, and then gets taken out of play the very next chapter. It's easy to view this baby rattle as nothing more than a get out of jail free card for Sukuna. I don't even mind the loophole personally, it's just that the weapon itself has no good showings, so even if I assume that it's a powerful weapon just like Playful Cloud, and especially in the hands of a Jujutsu god, it would actually be a real threat, it has nothing like that going for it. A fucking crow being taken out is not exactly special grade tool level, and it only makes Sukuna surviving here feel kinda ass-pully. Having sent out a wave of dismantles towards Higuruma, Kusakabe makes the save just like in Shibuya. His simple domain lessens the damage of the slashes, giving them another chance at the king's head. I love Kusakabe a lot in these chapters, him reassuring Higuruma that it's all okay and that he'll defend him with his life, only to immediately second guess himself internally, is hilarious and true to his character. In the meantime, Choso fires out piercing blood, but the speed of sound is not enough. Sukuna disappears out of Choso's sight so fast that he can't even finish saying he's disappeared in his own head before being turned into Kakuin and tossed at Yuji. Ino, of all people, takes the opportunity to get his time in the spotlight, slamming onto Sukuna with Nanami's cleaver. The attack is blocked, but the damage is more than Sukuna had expected. Surprisingly, they have imbued Nanami's curse technique into the cleaver itself. And I think it's great that Ino is the one to fight with the cleaver specifically. Since we've first seen Ino, he's always been the #1 Nanami truther, so witnessing him fight in Nanami's honor is very touching. Even if he gets Sparta kicked like one page later. 07 soldier. Not giving Sukuna a chance to bask in the glory of defeating one of Jujutsu High's 4 heavy hitters, Yuji and Kusakabe attack from both sides. The former is shooed away by a few slashes, while the latter parries with his katana. Out of nowhere, in a cool display of teamwork, Higuruma rolls over Kusakabe's back and takes a swing at Sukuna, narrowly missing. Sukuna makes use of his 4 arms, grabbing hold of Higuruma's left with his 2 right arms, bitch slapping him with his top left arm, and then picking Higuruma up by the collar with his bottom left, sending him flying away from everybody. Sukuna then Usain bolts it towards where Higuruma is going to land, while Yuji trails behind both of them. Inside a destroyed building, Higuruma is barely standing, and we get a flashback to a conversation he has with Yuji. Still crestfallen over the 2 lives that he took at the beginning of the Culling Games, Higuruma is determined. Not just to put his life on the line, but to die in the final battle as a way to punish himself. With no reverse curse technique, he locks eyes with the hulking monster in front of him, and as the executioner's blade begins to fizzle out, Higuruma's eyes show no fear and the sword lights up fully once more, enchanting Sukuna. What Higuruma was doing at this moment was nothing short of genius. While using domain amplification to weaken Sukuna's slashes, he still managed to keep his sword alight, the exact same way Sukuna did with Maharaga's adaptation against Gojo. Seeing this brings a big smile to Sukuna's face as he calls out, "Higuruma Hiromi, was it?" In that brief exchange, Higuruma had shown himself as someone worthy of Sukuna's respect, and as a result, Sukuna begins building up his cursed energy. He releases an omnidirectional wave of slashes, turning the building into nothing but platforms of rubble. Higuruma charges in, but in a display of extreme precision, Sukuna shows the gap in experience between the two. He sends micro slashes flying, dicing up pieces of debris near Higuruma's face, blinding him temporarily. When I mentioned the gap in experience, one thing to keep in mind is that Higuruma explicitly brings up his lack of battle and technique experience at the start of the raid. I think having Sukuna show this level of control over his curse technique is a way for Gege to subtly nod at that fact. Coming from behind Higuruma, Sukuna looks to attack him, but not before Yuji gets between them. He saves Higuruma, but gets a chunk of his abdomen torn off by Cleave in the process, and is then thrown aside by Sukuna. There isn't a single interesting bone in your body. Put a pin on that. Higuruma runs after Sukuna like a rabid dog in a Miyazaki game, jabbing his sword over and over again towards Sukuna, but every thrust is effortlessly avoided. Sukuna counters with a double haymaker and pulls the same move he did on Gojo, getting behind Higuruma. Unlike Gojo though, Higi has a cool one-shot sword, so he stabs right under him behind his arm, but Sukuna is no longer there. Instead, he's floating in the air and copying our glorious blue-eyed king once again. Instead of a red, it's the world slash and Higuruma is fucking dead. Okay, not actually. He only loses his arm, but with no RCT to heal it, he's reached the end of the line. Still clutching the executioner's blade, that arm is cut next before Higuruma can even get back up on his feet. Sukuna taunts that the head comes after, but before he can finish him off, a piercing blood diverts his attention. In the moment that follows, Higuruma clutches up, unlocking reverse curse technique and healing his right arm. He grabs hold of the sword and with all his remaining strength, plunges it into Sukuna's hand. His shocked face tells us everything. Sukuna had cut off his hand, rendering the instant kill effect of the sword useless. With no more cards to play, Higuruma is grabbed by the abdomen and the signature marks of Cleave form, and then... In the earlier flashback, Higuruma had told Yuji that he had become someone that could no longer look him in the face. In his final moments, he takes a small beacon of light remaining from his sword and tosses it at Yuji. Their eyes finally meet, reminding Yuji of that time in Shibuya. Just like Nanami, rather than becoming a curse for Yuji, Higuruma leaves him with the words, "I've done what I can." Sword in hand, Yuji strikes at Sukuna, but the blade had already burned out. Sukuna takes the opportunity to attack, punching Yuji away and sending slashes flying at him. Even in death, Sukuna remarks that Kamutoke is fully gone. This quick tangent in his mind distracts Sukuna, because when he turns his head back towards Higuruma, Wiwi and Kirara are there, picking Higuruma up, both of his arms emitting the signature smoke of RCT, and then... Wiwi's instant teleportation technique had not only saved Higuruma here, but also recovered Gojo's body in the chaos of Sukuna vs Kashimo before. Higuruma won't actually make any more appearances in the raid anymore, so let's talk about this fight more broadly. I love these couple of Higuruma specific chapters. This panel of Higuruma holding up his sword, surging with cursed energy is so raw, and the narrator telling us that his potential rivals that of Satoru Gojo is just the cherry on top. The decision to have Higuruma earn Sukuna's rare respect is also genius, and makes for a nice moment for Sukuna when we get to the next section. I would have liked to see Higuruma put up more of a brawl before going out, but when the whole point is the desperate gamble of the Executioner's Blade, you can only do so much without it getting repetitive. Also, thematically, it's pointed out many times that while Higuruma has the latent talent, he lacks the experience, and that sometimes people with great talent don't get to achieve their full potential. In Shonen, this is just a nicer way of saying that you fucking die, but thankfully in real life it's more like, I don't know, you gotta go work a job instead of pursue what you're actually talented or good at sometimes. Anyway, I can't wait to talk about Higuruma during the culling games. This is Orion from Channel 5 bringing you temperature check number 3. It's a dark day today as another fan favorite character bites the dust at the hands of Sukuna. Not only are the masses disappointed, but some are even angry at the Executioner's Sword failing not once, but twice. There's still a long road ahead of us, so make sure to stay safe out there. The bitching of the fandom can be fatal if you plug in for too long. This is Orion on Channel 5, signing off. Fighting Yuji after the 5-star meal that was Higuruma has got to be something straight out of Sukuna's nightmares. Not because they're scary, but because they're so boring and he's just having them over and over and over again. No matter how many times he gets knocked down, Yuji gets back up. Sukuna ponders for a moment. Why does he feel irritated? Did Higuruma's death sadden him? The Sukuna, the one who lives for his own sake, is disappointed over another person's death? It's an interesting moment in the arc for one reason. Sukuna is a very flat character during this raid. Not that he has no depth or is uninteresting, rather that his character is effectively a wall. Everyone else throws their own character and ideals at him, trying to break through that wall. Some will fail to break through and end up changing themselves as a result, while Sukuna will try his hardest not to change. He's dead set on his philosophy being the correct one. However, when Yuji is there in front of him, he realizes something. It's not that he's changed or that he's necessarily wrong, it's just that compared to everyone who came before him, Yuji is relentless. No matter the mental or physical torture, he gets up over and over again. Despite being far weaker, he keeps trying. With nothing but sheer force of will, Yuji will continue to fight Sukuna, and that cannot stand. Just then, a bright orb of light flies over the battlefield and makes its way to Sukuna. Kenjaku's insurance, Tengen, and the only way for the merger to actually happen now rests solely on Sukuna. He proclaims that he will kill everyone there, including the other calling game players, and then the merger itself. As everyone looks in anticipation, the ground underneath Sukuna erupts and Yuta emerges from out of it, swiping at Sukuna with his blade alongside Rika's attack. Yuta and the Queen of Curses finally come face to face with the King of Curses. In his own mind, doubt, worry, anger, all manner of thoughts cycle as Yuta looks down at Sukuna. Should he have stayed behind? Should Maki have been the one to ambush Kenjaku? Maybe if he'd been there alongside Higuruma, this fight would be... No. What's done is done, and the only thing he can do is move forward. Rika dashes between the two, using her shadowy body as a veil to hide Yuta from Sukuna's line of sight. Out of the shadow, the tip of Yuta's sword pierces through, but Sukuna grabs hold of the sword, and by precisely using his dismantles, he creates a pseudo-infinity around his hand, allowing him to grab Yuta's sword without taking any damage. Yuta notices this and lets go of the sword at the same time as Rika comes in from behind Sukuna, diverting his attention. She gets swatted away, but Yuta closes in and lands a nasty body shot right on Tamikuna. Before the dropped sword can hit the ground, Yuta clutches it and swipes diagonally at Sukuna, but is dodged and countered by a net of dismantles that Yuta escapes from. These were the same dismantles, as you can clearly see, that killed Kashimo, and Yuta dodging this means that he is just way stronger. I will not be arguing this. Feel free to write whatever you want in the comments, but I ain't reading them. Positioning himself for another combined attack with Rika, both are parried by Sukuna. Seriously, against Yuta at least, Sukuna straight up turns into Sekiro. With none of the attacks working and Sukuna's RCT slowly recovering, Yuta expands his domain, pulling Sukuna, Yuji, and Rika within it. A domain we didn't get to see during Sendai, all-encompassing unequivocal love makes its debut. A near-barren realm littered with katanas, each housing their own curse technique that Yuta has copied. He quickly grabs the first one, Uro's curse technique. While Sukuna uses Hollow Wicker Basket, Yuta rushes in with Thin Icebreaker, going past Sukuna's defenses and landing a nasty blow. To start the three-way jumping, Yuta sends out Druf's technique. Mini Rikas trace a path around Sukuna as Yuji and the real Rika close in. Yuji's punches are blocked, but that same effect reverberates throughout Sukuna's body. Rika plunges from the top rope, but the attack is avoided. Despite dodging Rika, Sukuna still manages to get tagged by Druf's technique, taking the tiniest little bit of damage, and the technique is never seen again. From afar, Rika sends Yuji flying at Sukuna, shaking his soul once more. Yuta comes in from the side after hiding within Uro's sky manipulation, but all of his attacks get parried the same way I kick Genichiro's shit in every time I replay Sekiro. In the meantime, Yuji has grappled Sukuna's arm, only to almost fucking die to cleave had Yuta not RNG'd Inumaki's curse technique. I like the little detail of Yuta spitting out a tiny bit of blood, since at this point his curse energy level is equal to that of Sukuna's, so he's not going to be taking, crazy amounts of damage like Inumaki did against Hanami, for example. Another sword is picked up, and the Thin Icebreaker Merchant strikes, sending Sukuna flying into a nasty two-part combo by Rika. Yuji and Yuta are in hot pursuit, but Sukuna watched season 2 of the anime prior to the fight and stops them in their tracks. With season 2 of the anime having ended by this point, it's actually really cool to see some of the influences that the anime-only scenes end up having in the manga. This panel of Sukuna is almost a one-to-one of this cut from the anime. I'll try pointing out more of these as we go through. Having taken decent damage from the Rain of Dismantles, Yuji and Yuta take a moment to heal their injuries, remarking that they'd be dead had Gojo not weakened Sukuna as much as he did. We also get the iconic "we cheated" line when Sukuna asks them what they've been up to until now. Yuji charges in together with Rika, while Yuta picks up another sword. Fucking Charles's curse technique makes an appearance, letting Yuta dodge Sukuna's counterattack and land a mean right hook to Sukuna's face. Yuji and Rika pile on the pressure, while Yuta continues searching for a katana. He picks one up and follows along, grabbing another one on the way. His first katana is Uro's curse technique once again, and using it as a veil to hide the second one, he strikes at Sukuna. At first, there's nothing, but the familiar form of cleave forms itself on Sukuna's face. The final finger that Sukuna couldn't recover, Rika had consumed it, and now Yuta has access to Shrine. Chapter 251 has got to be one of the most brutal ones in the entire final arc. This 3-on-1 did not feel like a battle at all. Instead, it was a feral fight for survival. No rules, no honor, just two dudes in a Rika beating the absolute shit out of Sukuna. From a cleave to the face, to punches directly aimed at Tamikuna, to Yuji literally grabbing Unk by the hair and knee-kicking his face in, this chapter was a 10 out of 10 on Leak Night. Every page that came out was Sukuna getting brutalized in a new and unique way. He'd still get a counterattack in, but Yuji would then manage to look him dead in the eye, mouthful of blood, and then spit that blood right into Sukuna's face to give Yuta a chance to uppercut him in the commotion. Raw, animalistic, and just what we all wanted to see. Even Sukuna was feeling the pressure, so in a desperate gamble, he lets go of Hollow Wicker Basket in order to prepare the world-cutting slash. The gang has already planned for this. Rika and Yuji grab hold of Sukuna's arm to stop the hand seals from forming. Yuta shoves his hand right inside Tamikuna, ripping his tongue out to stop it from chanting. He gets hit by a cleave right on the head, but it's not enough. Yuta gets back up and dashes in, cutting a piece of Sukuna's mouth before getting shoved away once more from the slashes. Once again, the damage is not enough, and Yuta goes in again, this time for the arm. Using blood manipulation to explode the blood that he had previously spat on Sukuna's face, Yuji diverts Sukuna's attention away from Yuta. The bottom right arm comes flying off, and Yuta then activates the sure hit of his domain. Having imbued it with Angel's Curse technique, Jacob's Ladder fries Sukuna. The effect is cancelled early, and Rika jumps back in, grabbing hold of his top left and right arm, while Yuta slices the bottom left one in half. Out from behind Yuta, Yuji gets into position. His punch directed at Sukuna's chest connects, and for the first time in this battle, Yuji is able to communicate with Megumi. A perfectly executed plan falls short right at the end once Megumi refuses to fight back. Having killed his own sister and teacher, his will to keep on living was shattered. Sukuna does the chant for the world-cutting slash, and on the page turn, Yuta is hit directly by it. His domain shattering immediately, Sukuna triumphantly raises his arms up, basking in the chaos, assured of his victory. But from behind him, Maki already stabbed him through the heart. Sukuna firing off world-cutting slash on Yuta is surprisingly a hotly debated topic, with some people, saying it was just a dismantle and others saying it was clearly world-cutting slash. Personally, I don't really care either way because I don't really think it changes anything narratively. My read though is that Sukuna broke free from Yuji and Rika while chanting for world-cutting slash and then fired it with his upper right arm. One thing you have to keep in mind is that weekly mangas are limited to around 19 pages, so it's entirely possible that Gege wanted to have a panel or page that shows Sukuna breaking free, but couldn't due to page count. Speaking of Gege, before I continue with the rest of the raid, one thing I want to highlight is Gege and his seemingly declining health within the final stretch of the manga. Health complications during publication is unfortunately not surprising or unexpected in the manga industry. To get a chapter out almost every week is no easy feat, so it's not exactly rare to have mangaka that spend 12 plus hours day in and day out just to make their deadline. In Gege's case, the most clear example of him overexerting himself was during the Maki portion of the Perfect Preparation arc. I made a video about that, by the way. A couple of the pages in chapter 150 were clearly unfinished, and chapter 52 was less than half the normal amount of pages, with Gege then taking a month-long break. As far as the raid is concerned, both the middle of the raid and the tail end of it, we see these same issues creep up. Firstly, with Yuta getting cut in half, and then again with Yuta and Gojo's body. Both chapters featured either unfinished drafts or unpolished drawings, with the latter also being cut short. This isn't meant to be a woe is Gege, be nice to him and excuse any writing decision he ever makes. Instead, I want this to serve as a reminder to be more understanding with the media that you consume. With how people talk about JJK sometimes, you'd think Gege tied them to the Sneeko chair and then went to town on their mother. The plan to have Maki sneak attack Sukuna is actually pretty clever, and I like the way Gege thinks. For starters, while waiting for the domain to break, Maki's seen kicking up some rubble. Not just for fun, but to basically create makeshift starter blocks so that she can launch herself at max speed without slipping, just like Olympians do. She's also seen without her katana because, unlike her, it contains cursed energy. When Gojo was fighting Toji during Hidden Inventory, he was using the cursed energy signature of the Soul Split Katana and Inverted Spear of Heaven to keep track of Toji. In order to eliminate the possibility of Sukuna picking up on the cursed energy and dodging the attack, the sword is actually taken along in Yuta's domain and then picked up by Maki as the domain shatters to give Sukuna almost no chance of reacting. And it works! Maki has successfully stabbed him through the heart, but as she swings upward to cut him in half, Sukuna is already out of there. Unlike normal cursed tools, the Soul Split Katana cannot be healed normally. Sukuna obviously can, but even for him it isn't easy. Maki vs Sukuna is a very interesting matchup. Why? I'll get to it in a second. Of all the fighters, Maki is kinda like a polar bear. She's strong as fuck and incredibly ruthless. She taunts Sukuna regarding his heart, and then chases after him, flying in with that one move that Isshin cuts my head off with sometimes. Sukuna responds with a dismantle, but Maki bounces off the pole and rolls into Sukuna, swinging diagonally. It's dodged via a jump, and the follow-up stab is grabbed in the exact same way as Yuta's sword. Unlike Yuta, Maki is a beast physically and is able to ragdoll Sukuna around, overpowering and sending him flying the same way Toji had done to her back in Shibuya. Trying to be sneaky, Sukuna creates a field of Yutapon cubes and dust around Maki, hiding his chance within the rubble to the viewers and within the sound of all the destruction to Maki. A single gigantic slash is sent out, however Maki's inhuman perception allows her to dodge it. Just like Mahoraga, Maki can see Sukuna's curse technique better than anyone else. It's also at this point that we get the infamous Master Sukuna has yet to go all out line, and to be honest, I don't know what to think. Sukuna and Gojo are always really annoying to use as measuring sticks for other characters, because unless the two are fighting each other, neither is ever trying their hardest or able to give their all. Given that we're in the endgame and Sukuna is so heavily damaged, I think any interaction he has with characters of Maki's caliber necessitates that he doesn't hold back, and it's also in line with what we see a handful of pages from now. Sukuna takes the lead as he sends another slash flying, but to no avail. Maki has Mario'd over it and gone on the offensive. Sukuna can hold her off as the building his slash did hit comes crashing down on the two of them. They both get out of the way, but Sukuna sends a few cars flying towards Maki. I'm assuming it's him, and this is a direct reference to the Mahoraga fight in the anime as Sukuna comes around and fires a dismantle at Maki. Using a car as cover the same way Gojo used a door. He really likes to copy Gojo, doesn't he? Maki blocks it, but the force sends her crashing into a building which Sukuna has already ran to. He sneaks up from behind Maki, tagging her with a cleave and pushing her away. Not before our boy Ino comes in, only to be hit by some baby dismantles and kicked far away. He cannot catch a break. From the top rope, Kusakabe comes crashing down with Nanami's cleaver, but Sukuna sees through it. Had Maki not come in and tackled Sukuna away, Kusakabe might have just been done for right here. Pissed off at the disrespect from the earlier blitz, Maki pulls the same move on Sukuna. She reaches the room before Sukuna's body does and uses a pillar to conduct her Hamon. The transfer of energy flings Sukuna across the room, and in the meantime Maki cuts up all the pillars into cubes and kicks them towards him. I think this is probably a reference to how Toji destroyed all of Megumi's rabbits by kicking up all the concrete and then shooting it with his fingers. At this point, Sukuna's excitement reaches its peak. Before the concrete cubes even move a few inches, Sukuna is out of view and has grabbed hold of Maki's face, tearing a chunk off, and giving us one of the rawest speeches we've heard from him in a minute. Unlike Yuji, who is half-assed, Maki is truly free from Jujutsu. And while Sukuna has spent his entire life honing his Jujutsu to the absolute pinnacle, before him stands someone who rejects both the Jujutsu and Sukuna's entire existence. This revelation inspires Sukuna. All his life he's only lived for himself, but now in this moment he's been forcefully given the role of Jujutsu sorcerer by Maki, and to him, it's a first. He completely shuts off his RCT, instead focusing all of his cursed energy into his fist. Maki tries to block, but the sparks of black, in this moment, have chosen Sukuna. The impact is replayed in 3 different panels.
Damn, you hit that nigga it so hard he replayed 3 different times.
And Maki's out of the fight. During National Women's Day, by the way, Gege is not beating the misogyny allegations. That last exchange between Sukuna and Maki is why I really like this fight. It's not long, Maki gets some good hits in, and Sukuna gets to, as far as we know, go fully all out in that moment against the students. It's also the first Black Flash a villain has hit since Mahito, and if you've been paying attention to the structure of the raid, it's very similar to Yuji vs Mahito. I think it's obviously supposed to parallel Shibuya in that respect, and as we get deeper into it, the more parallels you'll be able to clearly see. There's more characters involved in this fight, but the core stays similar. Speaking of more characters involved, I think narratively, Kusakabe's 1v1 battle with Sukuna is one of my favorite portions of the raid actually. It's no secret that Kusakabe isn't someone who actually wants to ever lay his life on the line for his job, but with Maki out of the count, Yuji and Choso MIA, and the heavy hitter Ino seemingly defeated, he has no choice. Kusakabe stances up in front of Sukuna. If he's gonna have a shot at surviving, it's going to be through simple domain. The first dismantle is parried. The reaction time impresses Sukuna somewhat. In Kusakabe's mind, he reassures himself that he's got options, and as long as he focuses on the sparks of cursed energy, he's going to be okay. Kusakabe's head nearly comes off. Sukuna can fire his dismantles without lifting a finger. The only other move he hasn't used yet, though. Kusakabe expands his simple domain to a range never before seen, stopping Sukuna from charging up the World Cutting Slash. Although Sukuna seems relatively unimpressed, a flashback of Gojo, Nanami, and Meimei all praising Kusakabe makes us believe that maybe, just maybe, he's got a chance, at least at survival. Kusakabe fights for his fucking life. His sword breaks in half, but he's not out of options, blocking Sukuna's view with his jacket and giving him the good old 1-2 combo before sending him flying far with a kick, chasing after him and getting into close quarters once again. Why is Kusakabe of all people trying so hard? That's the exact same question Kusakabe asks himself before Yaga of all people comes to the forefront of his mind. The relationship between these two is something that we've seen a couple of times, mainly at the end of Shibuya where we learned that Yaga had brought back the deceased son of his sister, and from that point on, Kusakabe had always been in his debt. With Yaga passing, the decision to keep fighting Sukuna is partly due to his absence, not just because he feels the need to repay that debt or because Yaga would be disappointed in him, but because if Yaga were here, he would want to fight side by side against Sukuna. That thought, as well as the idea of not allowing kids to give their lives in this fight while he runs away, is what keeps him going. He puts away all doubt and worry, hitting the Honored One pose as Meimei, Gojo, and Nanami all refer to Kusakabe as the strongest grade 1. Not solely on his strength, but because above all, he's a kind man. Kusakabe creates a new blade with his cursed energy, lunging at Sukuna with his eye on the heart. The final attack is easily blocked. Too predictable. Kusakabe is down for the count, Wee comes in to retrieve him, but this time around, Sukuna is done playing games. Wait, what just happened? Is that Miguel? The involvement of Geto's family in the 11th hour is not something that I expected nor knew that I needed. Miguel is an interesting character. A lot of the narrative and outside sources like the guidebook have quietly hyped him up throughout the series, but the only thing I can really remember about the guy is that he's a victim of a hate crime. It doesn't help that Gojo is also low-key racist in the flashback. Now when I say that I didn't know I needed this development, mainly it's because Miguel just shows up, saves the MVP of the raid, boxes with Sukuna, takes absolutely 0 damage, and then leaves. That is just incredibly based, and in a way it's a little bit disappointing because we don't get to see that much of him, but hey bro, it's fucking cool. LaRue ends up doing more than he does, but I gotta respect the hustle from Miguel. According to even Gojo, if he and Miguel fought with only cursed energy reinforcement, Miguel would win the sprint. Having bought enough time for Yuji to recover, Choso fires off a piercing blood, but Sukuna weaves it and sends slashes at Choso. They hurt, but the cut is shallow. Sukuna's cursed energy is waning. From the top, Yuji flies down, lowering Sukuna's output even more with a double punch. As the narrator comes in to explain how Sukuna's World Cutting Slash works, we get a POV shot. Yuji, Miguel, and LaRue are all taking on Sukuna, but as we can see from the speed lines on the pillars, we are moving at a quick speed. In the next panel, Sukuna's top right arm comes flying off, and on the turn, it's Maki. The Black Flash had done some damage, but she still came back for more. With weakened healing, output, and the inability to fire off Domain and Strong Cleave, the King of Curses is on the ropes. At least that's what Yuji thinks. Just like Gojo had landed his second Black Flash, bringing him back from near defeat, Sukuna lands his second one. Undeterred by his missing limbs, the king begins building his momentum, dodging away from the brotherly duo. Maki takes the fight to him, the two dancing in the air high above everyone. The duel is cut short as Sukuna lands another Black Flash, raising his output even further and taking Maki out of the fight with an empowered dismantle. Choso comes in, his supernova makes it hard to see, but from the blood and dust, dismantles fly out towards him. Before he can even think about dodging or blocking them, Sukuna has already outsped his own slashes. Grabbing Choso by the collar, he flings him into a wall and combos right into another Black Flash. It looks like Choso is a goner, but hardening his body just like in his fight against Yuji, he's able to mitigate some of the damage and grab onto Sukuna. Yuji aids his brother, punching Sukuna away and taking something from Choso's hands. He grapples with Sukuna, placing himself in a hold that lets Yuji aim his clasped hands directly at Sukuna. Unable to do it himself, Choso had done the first step of the technique for Yuji. It's ultimately ineffective, but it gets Sukuna to let go of Yuji, creating enough distance for Yuji to stance up. Just like in Shibuya, and just like Mahito, Sukuna feels it too. Nobody can use it at will, but in this moment, Yuji Itadori is primed and ready to unleash it. Just then, LaRue grabs hold of Sukuna's heart. A secondary effect of his technique completely catches Sukuna by surprise, and Yuji lands his first Black Flash, awakening in the process. Fully dialed in, both combatants stare each other down, recreating the iconic scene from the raid. Just like Yuji and Choso and Shibuya, you get the picture. Sukuna strikes first, but Yuji deflects his arm away and lands a clean body shot. Black Flash. Sukuna pulls his hand back and punches Yuji. He braces his shoulder and tanks the attack, but it's still one more Black Flash for the king. 1-1 so far. They look each other in the eyes once more as Sukuna chases after Yuji, who ducks behind a pillar, grabbing hold of it and using Shrine to cut a chunk off of it and throwing it at Sukuna. Because of that Black Flash, Yuji has finally unlocked Shrine. Over 200 chapters later, Gojo's words to Yuji end up becoming a reality. With his newfound power, Yuji digs his hand into Sukuna's leg, cleaving off the foot while simultaneously pushing past Sukuna's retaliatory slashes. Another Black Flash. The second MVP of the raid and heavy hitter Ino is back in action, casting the never before seen Ryu and adding Sukuna to the list of people that have seen the technique and not lived to tell the tale. Up until a magical force beyond our comprehension destroys the dragon and gives Sukuna a temporary buff that allows him, ever so briefly, to overpower Ino. To balance the scales, Yuji makes it just in time for another Black Flash, visibly frustrating Sukuna. He's been chaining Black Flashes like it was nothing. Does he intend to climb to my level? I love the pettiness of Sukuna, even in his own mind. He's like, my level? Does he intend to climb to my level? He's so fucking bitchy, it's hilarious. Having been sent to a lower level of the building, Sukuna cleaves the ground underneath him while Yuji is still leaping down towards him. With no footing to land on, Sukuna is able to throw a punch that grazes Yuji's abdomen. Yuji is unfazed. He clutches Sukuna's arm and tosses him into a wall, tanking through a wave of slashes and delivering another Black Flash. This one's payback for Choso. Sukuna is able to put his palm on Yuji's face, shredding the right side almost entirely. The two being related is emphasized even more here, with Yuji's new wound mirroring Sukuna's mask thing. Yuji doesn't really care about the missing face. He cocks back his fist and releases another Black Flash. This one in particular makes Sukuna furious, causing him to crash out mid-battle. A distraction big enough for Ino to get one last hit in, priming Yuji for the final Black Flash of the exchange. That makes 7 so far. Unable to regain his healing ability the same way Gojo did due to Yuji's Black Flash empowered soul seizing punches, try saying that 7 times fast, Sukuna's domain is instead returned to its master. Using Gojo's signature one-handed seal and impromptu binding vows, Malevolent Shrine is once again in play. However, instead of the shrine that we've been accustomed to, a grotesque dying creature is summoned instead. Yuji and everyone reading can surmise that although the domain is back, it's not operating at full capacity. In just 90 seconds, Shrine will collapse once again. Just as Gojo had used Simple Domain to bear the brunt of Shrine, Yuji, Choso, Ino, and Maki, with the help of Miwa, are able to withstand the onslaught. Bear it, bear it, bear it. Yuji's Simple Domain breaks first, and his body starts taking massive damage. He's knocked back and one of his feet is dismembered, but using blood manipulation and reverse curse technique, he's able to quickly reattach it, just in time for the slashes to stop. Ever since Shibuya, we have been begging and pleading to one day learn about the flames in the black box. Complementing his divine domain, the fire is only able to be used when the conditions have been met. Anything that has been struck by cleave and dismantle are fair game. And within the domain, everything is infused with his cursed energy. Firing off the arrow to the proclamation of victory by Uraume, the entire area erupts in a thermobaric explosion, wiping out everyone and everything inside it. The page turns and we get a look at Yuji, shocked to see Choso in front of him. In the last possible moment, he had used every last bit of his cursed energy to shield Yuji from the blast. As Choso withers away, we get a dream sequence of both brothers at the table. 2 of the 4 seats empty as Eso and Kechizu have already passed on. Throughout the entirety of Choso's character arc, after realizing that Yuji is his brother, he has tried his damnedest to be at his side, trying to teach him blood manipulation, fighting alongside him against Sukuna, and now finally protecting him against Sukuna's ultimate move. Choso has to say goodbye. He's insecure about being a bad teacher and inadequate brother, but Yuji quells those doubts by telling him that because he's been there for him when he needed it most, it's more than enough. These words of affirmation are enough to put Choso at ease and make him realize that he's always been there for his brothers, not just Yuji. That's been his role the entire time. Since death paintings are still conscious in a way, throughout their 150 years of being in jars, Choso was always looking out for his younger siblings, and now, in his final moment, he can go out thankful that he was of use to his younger brother. Yuji is saved from Fuga, however. Within the sea of ashes and plumes of smoke in the aftermath of Fuga, Yuji wanders alone, calling out to anyone, hoping that there's someone out there. From out in the distance, Sukuna walks out and towards Yuji. Enraged at the sight, Yuji yells at Sukuna, readying himself to fight. From Yuji's left, far into the smoke, another figure emerges. That figure being none other than Aoi Todo. Just as he had come at Yuji's low point in Shibuya, history repeats itself. This time around, however, there's no need for speeches. Simply telling Yuji that everyone is most likely fine is enough. Yuji fully trusts Todo, and the iconic brotherly duo is back in action after 127 chapters. With his curse technique burned out, the King of Curses smiles, welcoming the challenge. What is there to say about Todo that hasn't been said before? Aoi Todo is one of the coolest and best characters in this entire manga. Fight me on that. Just like how Choso wanted to be the big brother that would always look out for his younger brother, Todo fulfills a similar role. Despite not really being his biological brother, the two share an incredible bond, and throughout the whole manga, Todo has been an immovable wall, providing Yuji with support no matter what. In Goodwill, he saves him from the assassination plot, helps him grow and land a Black Flash. In Shibuya, he arrives at Yuji's low point and aids in the fight against Mahito. And now, finally against the king, Todo is once again there side by side with Yuji. It's a great parallel to Shibuya and Choso. I just wish the two would have interacted at least once. Right off the bat, Todo brings out his new weapon. Instead of a prosthetic hand, he's attached a vibroslap, an instrument. While goofy looking, by using the collision of the instrument as the activation condition for Boogie Woogie, why do I write things like this? Instead of clapping, Todo can swap 50 times within a single second. Here's a demo for what this would look like. Clutching the instrument to stop the vibrations and in turn the swapping, Yuji and Sukuna prepare to strike each other. Todo once more smacks his instrument, switching himself with Sukuna and landing a punch-kick combo alongside Yuji. Without access to his technique and domain expansion, of all sorcerers to have faced him, at this moment, Aoi Todo is the peskiest of all. I love that Sukuna uses the word egocentricity to describe Todo here. While he's usually playing a supportive role, one thing you gotta consider is that none of his allies can control his swapping. Everyone that fights against or alongside Todo are always marching to the beat of his vibroslap. This aspect of his character makes him incredibly unpredictable, and when you add on him just being downright insane, you get a near impossible to defeat opponent, much less predict. Attempting to buy time and create distance, Sukuna runs down to the lower level of the city. Todo is right behind, leaping from the building and swapping himself with Sukuna, giving him solid footing and Sukuna no room to dodge in the air. Unfortunately, Todo hasn't seen that Sukuna can air dash, causing his attack to whiff. I also really like Todo's response to this. Unlike Choso, who sat there, shook at Maki and Sukuna air hopping, Todo sees Sukuna do it, doesn't question how, and simply keeps that information in mind for next time. He's got 530,000 IQ for a reason. Following that up, Yuji has been watching season 2 as he pulls the same move he did against Mahito, another case of the anime inspiring the manga. The dropkick is feral, with Yuji straight up going monkey mode on Sukuna, only to get picked up, rather disrespectfully, but before he can get launched halfway across the world, Todo swoops in with a save once again. Fighting this guy has got to be the most annoying thing in the entire world, and I think Gege did a really good job at portraying a swapper character, right up there with Shimazaki from Mob Psycho for me. These entire 2 pages are essentially just Todo swapping Yuji around with Sukuna over and over again. Yuji gets his punches in, while Sukuna is left with no options. Despite this disadvantage, Sukuna has experienced a technique within Yuji's body beforehand, so he has an idea for when he can counter. Expecting the fate that ended Mahito, he readies himself. Just then, one of Mei-Mei's crows pops out behind him. Expecting the crow to swap with Yuji given how fast Todo's new Boogie Woogie is, Sukuna is left with less than a second to make a decision. He spins around and attacks the crow, but there is no swap. 3 whole layers of deception. Just like Hanami, and just like Mahito, Sukuna had fallen for the same exact trick. Yuji lands a powerful Black Flash, digging his claws into Sukuna's chest. Out in the distance, the familiar blue eyes draw the attention of Sukuna. Is that Gojo? I'll just let my buddy Jaded give his take on this.
Please.
Let me get a bit closer, bro. Hey, look, Yuta, you gotta bleep this out. Yuta is a fucking fraud. He sucks. That whole gimmick sucks. That whole thing was trash. I don't understand half of the shit that he did inside that body. Like, the biggest thing that I really question is.
Check the rest of the video out on Josh's channel. It was filmed a while ago, but we basically should talk about JJK for an hour. I think this one, I'll just give my thoughts about on this whole portion rather than trying to tie it in with the play-by-play. These Yuta chapters came out during a time where Gege was incredibly sick, so much so that one of the chapters is only like 7 pages long, so it's not the most interesting thing out there. And Yuta and Gojo's body is, honestly, one of the cooler concepts / ideas that Gege has had. After the battle in Sendai, Uro tells Yuta that he doesn't have what it takes to reach that next level of power over a panel of, Heian era Sukuna. For to take that next step would require abandoning everything and living only for yourself and ultimately turning from human to monster. During Yuta's fight in Sendai, he spent a lot of energy and effort keeping civilians safe. When Kuro showed up, he played things close to the chest, and even within the deadlock, he let both of his opponents live. Had Yuta not tried to hide his reverse curse technique, believing in himself to win any fight no matter what, he would have likely taken no damage against Kuro. Had Yuta not held back in the beginning to protect the civilians and gone all out with Rika, maybe he would have won outright. It's this compulsion of the good guys that often holds them back in fights against the ruthless sorcerers of old. Yuta isn't a monster like Sukuna, and he can never be the next Satoru Gojo. Both of these themes that appear way earlier in the story are explored in this portion of the fight, and on their own are phenomenal, but with Gege's health being poor at this point in time, it makes me feel like we missed a bigger part of his vision. What I think Gege wanted to explore with Yujo is twofold. On one hand, he wanted to push the overly human Yuta to do something truly inhuman, showcasing the depravity needed to become an equal to Sukuna, only for it to fall flat on its face, because fundamentally, Yuta is not that guy no matter what. Because of this, he loses out on the fight, but it doesn't end up making him any weaker. As I've mentioned before, this battle against Sukuna is the power of solitude versus the power of friendship, let's call it. Yuta maintains the barrier shards around Yuji and Todo, aiding in their fight against Sukuna. The second point, Yuta not being the next Gojo is pretty self-explanatory. Again, he's not that guy. It also ties into the final chapter where Gojo tells Yuji that the world has had enough of Satoru Gojo and that his students need to be more forward-thinking. They can't always rely on him and that they need to develop strength different from himself. Yet they don't do this. Yuta uses Gojo's body, attempting to become his master as a way to defeat Sukuna. But despite his talent, skill, and Gojo's memories, he's unable to close it out. Again, it's a cool concept and theme, but it feels underdeveloped, and as much as I want to shit on the execution, it's hard to do so fairly given the real-world context. Let me know how you feel in the comments though. Using the last of his Hamon to keep the broken barrier shards as a perfect stage for Boogie Woogie, Yuji and Todo continue their assault against Sukuna. In the moment that Todo is distracted by Yuta falling over, Sukuna takes the opportunity to land another Black Flash, breaking off a vital piece of the Vibra Slap, while also paralleling Mahito's Black Flash on Todo. I feel like at this point it should be super obvious how similar the setup is. Undeterred, Todo smacks himself on the head with the remaining piece of the Vibra Slap, swapping Yuji around and around Sukuna. He stops the swapping right in Sukuna's blind spot, allowing Yuji to land a cleave right at the barrier between Sukuna and Megumi's souls. Actually, I think it's a dismantle, but potato. Of all the attacks that Sukuna has sustained so far in the raid, this one is the deadliest. He hurls out a couple of his fingers, but shoves them back in. Personally, that's kinda yucky, so I wouldn't do that myself. Yuji and Todo keep chasing Sukuna down like rabid dogs, bracing himself for another wave of swaps, but there's nothing. Up from above Sukuna, fucking Hana is there, prepping the second Jacob's ladder that Sukuna will walk away from while sustaining nearly 0 damage. Listen, I understand the whole give and take aspect of Jujutsu and Hana missing an arm, thus lowering her output because she can't do an extra step to strengthen the Jujutsu. But come on, she was already kind of a bum, so for her to basically only show up as a way to get Todo out of the final confrontation, it's a little annoying. I like the concept of Yuta having 2 Jokers in the deck and that being a strength of copy, but I preferred the way it was utilized with Cleave way more than Jacob's ladder. I will say though, Sukuna climbing the ladder towards Hana did present this opportunity for Todo to come in clutch one last time, and it did give us these lines from Sukuna. This Jacob's ladder will hit Aoi Todo and the brat. And this man, he is a Jujutsu sorcerer to his core. What a perfect send-off to Todo as he's sent packing across 2 buildings from the force of Sukuna's Black Flash. He's truly someone that deserves and has earned Sukuna's respect. And our respect, by the way. From the light of Jacob's ladder, Yuji flies out towards Sukuna, grabbing him by the legs and Rock Lee style dragging him down into the ground. Now on his own, Yuji is unable to keep up in the fight against Sukuna. His cleaves are dodged, attacks parried, and when Yuji himself is the one dodging, he's met with a punch to the face by Sukuna's freshly regenerated arms. The previous Black Flash and lack of hits from Yuji has given Sukuna his RCT back, and Yuji is fully against the ropes. The moment we have all been waiting for, Yuji Itadori unlocks his very own domain expansion. Within the barrier, however, something is off. Yuji's in his school uniform, completely unharmed, meanwhile Sukuna, he's in the same form as he was inside Yuji. What's going on here? Chapter 265, That Day. This is one of the best in the series for me. It's a final opportunity for Yuji to appeal to Sukuna's humanity, whatever there may still be left. This dreamscape is a reflection of Yuji's hometown from when he was young. The two walk past movie theater, stables, and a park, all areas that Yuji is personally attached to. I find it funny that in the park, Sukuna corrects Yuji on the flower that he's looking at. Then when he's called out for knowing what it is, he says it's because of Megumi's memories, which may be true, but it's probably BS. One thing I want to quickly talk about is the Heian era itself. I was at a library recently and stumbled upon the Japan section. It had books about language, culture, Japanese novels, and most importantly, history. I thought about JJK in that moment and wanted to find a mention of the Heian era, mainly to send a picture to my friends and be like, lol, look JJK IRL, or something silly like that. But then I sat down and started reading the actual chapter and found some interesting information that kind of reflects on Sukuna's character and this moment in particular. Let me explain. Essentially, the Heian era isn't the golden age of Jujutsu just because Gege picked a random real-world era and called it that. It's a genuine high point in Japanese history. Influence from China is being phased out, and there's like a peak of imperial power, blah blah blah, but most importantly for our purposes, art and culture were becoming of utmost importance. How does this relate to Sukuna? Think about it. In an era where appearances and customs are of utmost importance, a hulking monster that lives only for oneself without any regard for others is the ultimate foil to that entire period of history. And while he himself is the foil to that aspect of the Heian era, poetry and art are clearly somewhat important to Sukuna. The English dubbing and official translations often miss out on Sukuna's manner of speech. He's very poetic, as seen in his fight with Yorozu where he critiques her haiku as if he were the fucking poetry expert. And of course his final words to Gojo are incredibly well spoken. In the context of chapter 265, it's likely not just Megumi's memories that Sukuna randomly decided to sit through, but his genuine appreciation and love of the arts. Just something I thought was neat and maybe applied here. Since this video is mainly supposed to be about Sukuna, I'm going to focus on that aspect, and instead I recommend you watch this video by Radman exploring the chapter more deeply. It echoes a lot of my thoughts on the chapter, and I don't want this to end up just being a copy-paste of that video. Also, I want to leave something for the eventual review of the series and its ending. Spoilers, I don't think it's that bad, and the Yuji specific stuff is all terrific. What Yuji is trying to convey to Sukuna by showing him all of these places that Yuji has had these incredibly human experiences is that humans don't have a set role, and even the smallest joys in life are what make it worth living. People like Sukuna and Mahito that disregard all of it and act like it's of no importance are loathsome to Yuji. Even still, in this final moment, he tries to show compassion to his most hated enemy. Sukuna doesn't take kindly to being pitied, giving us his most unhinged expression to date. Now in the real domain, Yuji takes the battle to Sukuna. Despite his earlier declaration of victory, he's outmatched in the 1v1. Sukuna gloats about how he's going to kill all the humans despite Yuji, but the manga isn't called Sukuna Kaisen. Before he knows it, his leg is submerged in shadow. Prior to this exchange, Yuji had finally been able to connect with Megumi. I like that Yuji's grandpa, who, let's be real, doesn't have much plot importance, ends up at least being an important person to Yuji. Up until now, Yuji's goal has been to wake Megumi up, to get him to fight back, to live. However, Megumi's soul and mind have sunk to the bottom, and Yuji, through the lens of his grandfather, understands. Ever since joining Jujutsu High, he's had nothing but negative thoughts piling up. You throw in having to live with the burden of what happened in Shibuya and the thought of having to spend the rest of his life this way, Yuji can empathize with the decision that his grandfather made to not take any medicine for his lung cancer, or really with anyone in a helpless situation. This realization has Yuji tell Megumi,
Your life is nothing. You serve zero purpose. You should kill yourself now.
Kinda. Till now, Yuji and the gang have been making a decision for Megumi. While all he wants to do is curl up and die, his friends have put their lives on the line to save him. It's here where Yuji's able to let go and allow Megumi to make his own decision. Yuji will kill Sukuna, and whether Megumi wants to help and survive, it's up to him. Seeing the puddle of shadow knock Sukuna out of balance, Yuji smiles. This tiny panel is everything, man. Even though he was losing at first, the scale has tipped over. He lands punch after punch, and Sukuna is furious. The two grab onto each other's heads and begin pummeling them. Seriously, this is like Unga Bunga maxed out, just street fight. Sukuna once again loses out, his hollow wicker basket shattering in the exchange. Yuji prepares his final punch to completely destroy the basket, only for his gauntlet to be ripped apart by Dismantle. Sukuna has reset his burnt out curse technique, and he's ready to use domain expansion. Looking at Yuji's left hand, he notices that something is wrong. And then, fucking Nobara. This decision by Gege to have Nobara State be a question mark for like 3 arcs, only to bring her back for the final 3 chapters, it's baffling. And yet, seeing her face, the Opapi callback, and Yuji tearing up when he realizes that she is alive and well, and there with him in this moment, just like in Shibuya, it almost makes me want to forgive Gege. Nobara, Yuji, and Megumi have an incredibly fun dynamic that brought about some of the best moments in the series, but due to Nobara dying, and the calling games separating Yuji and Megumi from the get-go, this chapter just makes me upset that we missed out on so much of this, and I wish Gege had just brought her back right after Shibuya instead of giving us Schrodinger's Nobara for like 4 years. This is, I think, the biggest issue with all the payoffs in the final arc. What is undoubtedly a phenomenal moment is undercut by the realization that Nobara just now woke up 30 minutes ago, clocked in, and now is going to be a vital piece in defeating the final villain. Even still, the resonance works like a charm. Sukuna can't open his domain, and the sure hit of Yuji's domain lands. Rather than dismantles the take-off limbs, Yuji's sure hit strikes at the boundary of Sukuna's soul. The next punch makes Sukuna hurl even more fingers, but he's not fully out of the fight just yet. Yuji has expended a huge amount of cursed energy opening his domain. It's anyone's game at this point. They exchange direct blows to the face, double impact. Yuji's first official move makes the final cut once again, knocking Sukuna off balance and setting up the final Black Flash of the series, ringing the bell on a long fight, and also the final parallel to his fight with Mahito. The fight is over. Within the darkness of Megumi's soul, Sukuna attempts to put him down one last time, trying to buy himself another chance at Yuji. Megumi isn't buying it. Yuji's speech had given him the strength to give living one more chance, and he's gonna take it. Sukuna is expelled from his body, and all that remains of him is this blob thing. With no host to attach himself to, Sukuna begins withering away. Yuji offers him a second chance, but Sukuna is too proud to accept the offer. However, before fully fading away, 266 chapters in the making, Sukuna finally calls Yuji by his name directly. I'm surprised you've taken this farce so far, Yuji Itadori. The final arc of Jujutsu Kaisen is pretty incendiary online, but what I find funny is that people were so checked out by the time the final chapter rolled around that leakers straight up missed like 4 pages, and no one noticed until the official release. These 4 pages are actually a small epilogue for Sukuna. Now, do I think that these 4 pages change much? Not really, but I do think they tie a nice little bow to Sukuna's conclusion. When it comes to his life philosophy, the reason that Sukuna has been able to go through life living so selfishly and with no regard of others is because he believed that strength is absolute, and no one has ever been able to prove him wrong. For to prove him wrong would mean to defeat him. But now that he's officially lost, he gracefully admits defeat and is even willing to walk a different path should there be a next time, much to the dismay of Mahito. In the end, his finger that once represented curses and had to be locked away and sealed remains left alone in a thermometer shed, not even sealed nor in a box, symbolizing that Sukuna has moved on and that the finger will no longer be a beacon for curses, instead acting as a talisman into the future. And with that, the book closes on the King of Curses. Thank you for watching.